Welcome to Because We Love You, a podcast dedicated to living a life of personal wellness. My name is Jade, and this is my co-host, Stacy.
Hi, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about happiness. We have a two-part series where we'll discuss what is happiness and also how do we get happier.
Yes, it was so exciting. There's going to be lots of information and research, so check out our show notes, and as always, follow along. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and listen to us on Apple Podcasts. Okay, let's jump right in. This week, we're talking about one of my favorite subjects of happiness.
Love it. And we're here in our happiness gear.
Yes.
For those of you who can't see us, if you're listening, my shirt says Be Happy, and it's tie-dye, which is so
Tie-dyed.
fun.
Yes, that's what makes me the happiest. And I have a
Yeah.
smiley face.
Yeah.
I actually saw these shirts, and I was just like, we have to get them for our episode in
Yeah.
November, because November, I feel like it's a time of year where we focus on happiness.
Yeah, happiness.
So
Love
what
it.
is this, Stacy? Like when we did all the research, it was like, what is happiness? Because we all want it. Like
Yeah.
you can't even come in contact with any one person that if you say, do you want to be happy? They're like, no.
Of course. And that seems like the number one thing people want. There's a million books on it, movies on it. We hear about the pursuit of happiness all of the time. And so it's kind of hard to figure it out, though.
Do you know the reason why I bought a Volkswagen?
Why?
Is because their logo is Be Happy.
Oh.
And so I was just like, I want to drive a car that is known for happiness.
I
right?
love it. That's great.
So I'm all in.
Yeah.
But I think it's more than that. So
Yeah. So, as a psychologist, when I think about happiness, we tend to measure it as like subjective well-being. So just asking a person, like, how, good do you think your life is? So kind of life satisfaction and happiness, just kind of a subjective measure of that. But one thing, as we were researching, there's a center at UC Berkeley called The Greater Good. And so Jade and I have been reading a lot about that. Super interesting if you're looking for a place with good resources about trying to improve well-being. But I love this. I'm just going to read it because it's a quote from Sonia Lubomirski. Let's hope that's right. I did it. That's what I was most nervous about today, saying that name. But anyway, here's the definition, more importantly, of happiness. So she says that happiness is the experience of joy, contentment, or positive well-being, combined with a sense that one's life is good, meaningful, and worthwhile. And I love that because we think of happiness as like a feeling, right? Like something we feel, like I want to feel happy. But I love that this definition also points us to the fact that happiness is also more also about kind of a trait, like having a meaningful life, something that's longer lasting. It's not just a fleeting thing like I'm happy that I'm not, which is part of the story. But it also involves this like longer lasting, deeper meaning,
And I think that for me personally, and as a young child, we thought about happiness in moments like this made me happy, this made me happy, this, but it's more complex than that, and so I like that. Yes, that's why it is a little bit harder to obtain, and that some people say I'm not happy because those moments are so quick that it's impossible to reach happiness in these spurts of pleasure that we have. But it has to be more of a general sense of well-being, like this is my purpose, this is my calling, this is what I'm supposed to do. And so that's kind of freeing in a certain way, that it is a little hard, and it's okay for it to be hard, but it's okay for us to look into why. So I was actually Googling this week, and I was like, what do people think? What do people think makes them happy? And so some of the things were things that make me happy too in moments, but I think we should just go through a list. So the number one thing that people think makes them happy is money.
Money. Yeah, that's a big one. And, interestingly, we were talking about this and reading a Gallup poll that reported that almost all Americans, I think it was like 83%.
It was like 73%. Yeah.
73% of Americans say that they believe having more money would make them happier.
Yeah.
So people think that, right?
Yeah, we all think that. And when you read into that article, but you actually shows that yes, some money makes us happy. Like if we're able to buy shoes and food and able to go on a few trips. But there's like a certain level of happiness. Like when you have enough, when your resources are enough, maybe not over in abundance, it does make you happy. But when it's over in excess and when you don't need it, it actually has a negative effect on your happiness that you're not as happy.
Yeah. So it's like, as long as you can do the things you need to do, buy food, support your family, have some sense of control, that's really all you need. But anything beyond that really is not as helpful as we would think. So,
And just money in general, though, they say when people spend their money, if they have excess, when you choose to spend it on others, it was one study, like in another country, it was like the people were 200% more happier when they spent their money on other people, which gets into just kindness and some of the things we talked about in previous episodes.
Yeah. And I think too, thinking about how we spend our money is really important. We've read a lot or kind of seen a lot of studies in the past couple of weeks about how to spend your money on experiences and not things. And I think, as the gifting season is coming up, if you have birthdays coming up or holidays like Christmas that you celebrate with your family, thinking about how can we spend our money on experiences for the people we love rather than just, buying more clothes and more toys and all of the things that we already have.
Because they last longer. These experiences last longer and create memories. And if you are going to buy gifts, maybe we should just buy a lot of Poppets, because I hear that that's goodness. All the kids want.
All the rage.
And so we could spend like $2 on a piece of rubber and our kids are happy, and then really put all the money in the trip to Disney.
Yes.
Come on, guys.
I think that sounds great.
Get behind
That sounds great to me. Another one I thought was interesting was age, right? That people just want to be younger. If I could be young again. But it turns out that doesn't matter. Age is not really related to happiness. And if it is, you tend to see that people kind of get happier when they get older. Our emotions tend to kind of even out a little bit. So
more wisdom.
More,
a little bit more money to do things. Because I think about when I'm younger, I'm like, I couldn't do anything because I couldn't afford it. And it's nice now to be able to go on some trips. I think that, but it was interesting that age had no relationship to your actual happiness. And age, and this is being a model or looks or physical attractiveness was a big one. And we know that because the beauty industry. And
we think about it all the time, how we look, losing weight, wrinkles, all the things that come with aging, and
I feel like those things make me happy. So it's very, it's like, what? They don't make me happy? Like research shows that they don't have any relationship to that deep, complex joy and meaningful, like that my life is worth it. So you can have a pretty face and your life not be worth it.
That's right. And people, kind of think that changing those things will matter, but it doesn't. And the other thing that it makes me think of my husband, because he's very good at this. Like he always says, I love those wrinkles around my eyes. It means I smile a lot, which I love. So I try and embrace those eye wrinkles.
This reminds me of a song. So Jimmy Soul, he made this perfectly clear for all the men. So men, if you want to be happy for the rest of your life, never make a pretty woman your wife. And from my personal point of view, get an ugly girl to marry you. That was so easy. And we didn't need any research, right? Jimmy Soul told us all that it's not about being pretty.
Looks.
Don't even do the pretty thing. Just get an ugly girl to marry you, and then you're going to be happy. So hey, that was free, and Jimmy Soul did it a lot.
That's just a bonus track there.
If you want to sign me for any vocals, yes, I'm willing and available.
You can record that someday. I love it.
Another thing that was really interesting is that people think that free time will make them happy, and I often think that I'm like, if I could just get a break, if I could just not do anything, if I could just stop small group, if I could just stop volunteering in ministry or whatnot.
Yeah, we want free time, but the research shows actually when we're busier, when we fill our time, when we have downtime, you can kind of get in a rut, you lose track of your goals, and then you're just kind of hanging around doing what? Looking at your phone, watching TV. Do you really think that's going to make us happy? But when we fill our time doing things, especially for other people, like you're saying, serving in ministry or in other ways in your community, that's really what makes us happy. So.
It makes perfect sense, but it also gives me freedom, in that free time to recharge and to revise the vision. We talked about that earlier, but I like that. Use your free time to revise the vision and to give you more energy to do the things that truly will bring happiness.
That's right. That's good. And when I think about all of these together, I think it's interesting that a lot of them go back to comparison. And when we look at happiness, I think one reason why people tend to struggle with it is because we do a lot of comparing. We engage in a lot of social comparison. Like, am I better off than the person next to me? And so it depends a little bit on your comparison group. But when you think about, if I just had the money that person has, the bigger house, the nicer car, if you think about, I just want to look like that person looks. I wish I had that small of a waist, or I wish I had legs like that. I wish my hair looked like that, right? We constantly are engaging in this process of social comparison, and it's actually making us pretty unhappy.
Because we're not focusing on the things that our life that we can do, that we have, and it's bringing that back. Theodore Roosevelt has a cool quote: "Is comparison is a thief of joy."
Yeah.
And so it is. But I mean, I think, and let's be real, we all do it. So we're not sitting here. I'm not sitting here saying that you will never compare, because you will always look at something and want it or whatnot. But I just think we have to retrain our brains to be like, no, but what do I have? What can I give? What is my thing? What am I good at? Because I mean, sometimes I will think that I'm like, I wish I was good at that. Like, I wish I was a better speaker, or I wish that I had those opportunities. But then I'm like, what am I good at? And then just focusing on the things that you're good at. And it is hard, but I think if we train ourselves and then we get that positive feedback, we're like, this feels good. This did make me happy. I am this. And even teaching our kids that at an early age, because I think that's going to be, we've talked about this with our girls already, seeing it, like blonde hair to black hair. I've got to have this. I've got to have that. Teaching them, like, but what are you? What are you good at?
We just had this conversation last night. My daughter, already at 8, is thinking, like, she literally said, "Mom, am I fatter than all my friends?" And I'm like, "Why? How are they even at this age thinking about those things?" And so we had a long talk about, that you were made just the way you're supposed to be, and you're perfect the way you are, and that kind of thing. But that's hard for us. I mean, we struggle with that even as adults, and that's hard.
But battling it and being on the front lines and recognizing it. I think if we learn to just recognize, I'm comparing right now. Yeah. I'm comparing. This is not going to be good for me or the other person. I think that can truly, we can be happier.
Because the truth is, there's always going to be someone with more. There's always going to be someone with more money who's thinner or stronger or prettier. There's going to be someone who has more free time or is younger. There's always someone, right, who has more, and we just can't worry about that.
And sometimes in our inept state, that is what makes us different, and that is where we grow the most, and things lie. But we do know from a lot of research, over 50 years of research on happiness, we do know 3 things that actually make up if we're happy or not.
Yeah. It's interesting. The one that was kind of, I mean, if you think about it, maybe it's a little depressing, but they say about 40 to 50% of happiness has to do with genetic makeup, with genes. So there's not much we can do about that, right? Which may be the depressing side of the story. But if you look at twin studies, so this tends to be one way that they look at genetic component of, of lots of different things. But if you compare fraternal and identical twins, you see that happiness levels tend to track more closely in identical twins than in fraternal twins. And with the overlap, of course, in genes.
And even if they live in different areas, which was interesting, like they would separate and not be in the same environment, but yet their happiness level would be about the same. And it's referred to as like a happiness set point. Yeah. So I kind of think like, yes, we all do have this level where we're at, you know, and
tend to be happier.
That's just where we stay. And yes, you could be, but there's a whole nother piece to the puzzle that we do have some control over.
Absolutely. Yeah. The second one was life circumstances. So, and I think that this is where we think that carries a lot of weight, like the good things that happen or the bad things. If bad things happen to me, I'm going to never feel happy. If good things happen, I'll feel happier. But the research shows it's only somewhere between, the estimates are between like 8 and 18 to 20%, somewhere in there. So not a huge number. Right? So if we think like rich or poor or, sick or not or whatever, those different things that control our recent experiences or life experiences, maybe don't matter as much as we think.
Yeah. An interesting, like Facebook did a quick research study on positive emotions and the days of the weeks.
Yeah.
And it's not very surprising, but on Friday and Saturday, circumstances, there's a lot more positive emotions and we tend to be happier. But that's still a small piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
But I also think about, some people have had hard lives. Right. And you might even be listening to this podcast and being like, yeah, I've never been happy and I'll never be happy. Because I've been given these lemons, but knowing that it is a small piece, you can choose in these next segments. We're going to talk about the big piece to the puzzle that we can control, which is our habits.
Yeah. Daily activities, like that leaves about 40% that we can attribute to daily activities or the habits that we engage in. We have control over those things. That's great news.
Yes. So we can, there's hope in our habits.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. That's good.
I just thought about that. Woo! I feel
hope in our
so
habits.
No matter what's happened to you, there's hope in our habits.
That was good.
Habits. So we know, we feel like this matters. I think we all know it matters, but why? Like, why does happiness matter? And what does the research show about happiness matter?
So we do want people want to be happy, but, for us, what's cool is that there's research showing that it affects pretty much all areas of our lives. One thing that, as a cognitive psychologist, I find interesting is how happiness affects the way that we think or remember. And so the way that we perceive the world changes based on our mood. So when we're happier, we perceive the world as a safer place, as a kinder place. And so I think that's really powerful. The way you see things, the way you interpret things in your environment changes. Also, the way that we remember changes, right? There's one really cool thing about memory is that it's pretty context dependent, and our state can serve as a retrieval cue. So for example, when we're happy, it's easier to remember other happy things. When you're in a good mood, you think about other good things, other things that made you happy. And it's kind of like this happiness cycle.
This reminds me of our anxiety episode where we said spiral up.
Yes.
It's like whenever you're sitting together and you're just spiraling up. It also reminds me, we were traveling home from the beach recently and some memory cued in Sonic Flood and the songs.
90s worship
my
music.
Goodness.
For those of you
this
out
is
there.
what we jammed to in high school. And we couldn't even think of one of the songs. And then it just came to us and we're just like, I want to get carried away. I know another song.
So much singing today.
There's a lot. But
singing makes you happy.
Yes. Singing makes you happy.
Yes.
It's just proven.
Yeah.
But that was like, we just spiraled up from there. And it was just like another happy memory after another happy memory. And just, we really tracked. And that's just an episode. So you need, this is just free information. Get together with some buddies and spiral up together and start reliving some happy moments. Plan a trip and meet your friends that you hadn't seen in a while and just spiral up with them, because that can definitely bring back some good memories. And we have a lot to remember. And then I think it can also push us to making new ones. Like, this just wasn't when I was in high school. This can happen again. Yeah, like I can create another memory. Definitely. That's so cool. Another thing that research shows why we should want to be happy is happier people tend to be more connected, socially connected. Yeah. They tend to have more friends. They tend to have better relationships, like with their husbands and their kids. And I mean, I think we see that, and we talked about how we're wired for community before. So we know that friends give us help us with our self-esteem, and they help us even with our overall health and our well-being, and decrease mental illness. We're less sad. But these are one of the things that we need, that deeper meaning, because healthy people, I feel like when we are healthy and happy, we can overflow, right?
For sure. And build other people up. I think that's so good. and just being able to be there, and think about that, when you're in a good mood, how it shapes the interactions that you have with your family. Like, when you're in a good mood, then as we just talked about, you interpret things in a positive way, and then, you can impact other people's moods, and then that makes you happier. And so all of these things kind of seem to work together, which is so great.
I like, I think it was last night, my husband was telling a story about when he was teaching in middle school, and there was a kid who didn't have any connection at home. And so just personally, that's the connection I want to make, is like that our kids need our connection, you know, and that will help them be happier, and they'll learn how to connect, and it'll just like overflow. They will be happier because they've connected at home, because this particular child, this kid, was very unhappy. And I'm like, is it just perhaps because he's had no social interaction at home? So just a plug that, like, really working on our kids and their connectiveness, I think, will overflow into like how they are and happiness at school and in the community, and teach them that it's about each other.
For sure. That's good.
Being together.
I also find the research on happiness in the workplace interesting, because, if you think about, if you're running a company, you may not think much about, like, are my employees happy? Right? For you, you have to think about the bottom line. You have to think about money. You have to think about making sure that they still have jobs the next day. You have to think about productivity and meeting goals. And there are so many things driving that it's probably hard sometimes to think about, well, are you happy? Right? Because sometimes, like, I don't care if you're happy, just get your work done. Right? But importantly, research has shown in a couple different ways that happiness matters in the workplace. So if you look at the trait level, like we were talking about how there seems to be this happiness set point or genetic component, happier people are more productive, right? So that's good to know. But on the other hand, people are also more productive when they are happy. So if we think about it as a state, like even if you just do something that temporarily makes your workers happy, they're going to work for you, right? They're going to be more productive. And so I think there is a movement, right, where companies are thinking more about this. They're trying to think about, of course, health and mental health of their employees, but also just, emotional well-being, because it's better ultimately for your bottom line if your workers are happy.
Working at Cone Health, we now have Fresh Fruit Friday.
Oh, that's fun.
And so this employee just comes around with like this fruit bin, and usually it's themed if there's a holiday, Easter and Halloween and things like that. And it just has like a positive quote on there and some good, delicious snacks and that are healthy. And it does, like, that day we can be really stressed, or I'll be really stressed or thinking about something, and she'll just come by and say, "Happy Friday," and bring us these treats. And it just, the rest of the day, it's like, I've got a little, today's good. Like, life's good.
So it doesn't have to be a huge thing. Like you're doing some crazy programming that costs lots of money. It's as easy as buying some bananas on a Friday and, just
and maybe even just saying thank you.
Yeah,
thank you for being here. You're doing a great job. We miss those just words of affirmation when we're trying to get to the bottom line. It just might be a simple pause and say, I love drug reps because they bring coffee too. That's like that caffeine and all of the things, and it's just so nice. And this leads in Fresh Fruit Friday and health, but health is the nature of happiness. Like, happier people tend to be healthier, and that's what we see time and time again. And maybe the link is more exercise. Maybe the link is, we don't know exactly the link, the positive thinking. But there was a cool study done in 2003. I liked it. So 350 people, they were exposed to the common cold. I think that's great. And I want to know, like, I didn't read in, like, how are they exposed? Was it like swabbed in their nose or whatnot? But
have someone with the flu sneeze in their mouth.
Can you imagine if we were like, let's do this with COVID? Let's do a study with COVID. Gosh. Who's signing up for that? No, it's not happening. We'll see how good the vaccine works, though, if we do that. So 350 people, they are exposed to the common cold. Now, this 5 weeks before, a few weeks before, they were called multiple times and they were just asked these questions that were just happiness characteristics, and they scored them, and they were just seeing their general state of happiness. Then they were exposed to the cold. And then while they were in quarantine, they were called, and the people who scored the highest on the happiness score actually were the less likely to get the cold. And then they also had the best attitudes, even if they felt a little bad. They're like, yeah, it's not that bad.
That's interesting. So it's like somehow related to our immune response. And related to that, I think I've seen studies with vaccine effectiveness in terms of the antibodies that you produce seem to be higher. And
we also think, like if you're not happy, you probably have more cortisol, and that's that stress hormone, and that's toxic to our body, and it causes us to not sleep as well, and it causes us to gain weight. So it's all brain related, body related. But if, and also if we're more connected, if we're happy and we're more connected, we're exercising more, we're probably eating less. And then we know how food can be toxic to our overall health though too. And there's plenty of cool stories, just about people with cancer, if you, and their happiness and their positivity, and how that relates to their actually being able to fight the disease, and how they respond to chemotherapy. Like, providers will actually talk about they have a very low chance of being able to fight this because they don't have a support system, or they don't have the things in place. They don't have the mentality to fight this, and they'll be like, man, that girl can fight this. Like, it reminds me when my dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and he was sitting facing that, and they actually gave him a 3% chance to live. And I remember the story. I wasn't there, but my mom said my dad looked up at him and said, well, I guess I'll be the 3% then. And that's just like an example of, like, from the beginning, it was like, I guess I'll be in the 3%, but it'll happen. And my dad is here today.
Yes,
so
many, many years later.
15 years later, and my dad's still here. So that's just a great story of our positive mindset, and how it can affect our overall health.
Yeah. So that's a lot, and we, a lot to take in. And next week on our next episode, we're going to focus on habits. So if you want the practical, like, okay, what do I actually do? What can I control to make myself feel happier, to be in a happier state? We'll talk about that next week, but we'll leave you with this. We'll leave you with one happy thing. There's a lot of evidence showing that one thing you can do is called, I wrote it down here, the awe narrative. So awe, A-W-E. And so the idea is to recall a moment, to focus on a moment where you experienced awe, okay? And so I'll start because we recently went to Nashville, and I had a moment where I kind of had an awe moment. And so sometimes these are big moments. And this one was when we walked into the Grand Ole Opry. So we went into, to see the Grand Ole Opry, and you're in this space and just thinking about, like, all of the stars who are there was so cool. It just felt special. The way you sit, it was kind of organized like a church, like with the pews and
a Barney church.
Yeah. Kind of like a
barn.
Kind of looked like a barn.
It was like a Barney church.
When you said Barney, I thought like purple dinosaur, which I was like, I am not connecting on this moment. But yes, it kind of looked like a barn.
I'm glad we clarified. Yeah. You ruined that episode.
The Barney church.
No, like a barn. What's a church?
But that was a moment of awe. And then when the people came out and were singing, we got to see Deanna Carter, which was so cool.
Strawberry wine.
More singing, folks. We got to see some new and upcoming artists whose stories were so inspiring. And the whole thing was just like,
I think amazing. Though, like what I loved the most about that moment, it was just, like the hopes and the dreams that were like in that place.
Yes.
And that just like makes you happy that, you saw people that a lot of people don't know about, right. And that they were there like fighting for the thing that they feel called to do.
Absolutely.
And it was just like a moment, and to be there with such a fine group of people.
That's right.
Together and just singing those songs together and being there together.
Yeah.
And that just makes me think of my awe moments in life. I don't have like a particular one right now, but I remember that when we were on the way to Nashville, we all got to pick our one thing.
Yeah.
Like, what is the one thing you want to make sure you do no matter what? And they all picked, great, fabulous events and places to go and people to see. But I couldn't think of one. And I was just like, well, the only thing I want is just for us just to all be together and just have like this great moment and this great conversation or this great time. So I just want a moment. That was my thing. And we hadn't even discovered this awe effect yet.
Right.
But it just solidifies that our happiness doesn't come in things. It doesn't come in what we can buy. We could have had that same moment even in our living room. So the awe moment happens with people. And
when you feel connected, inspired,
and well-being and purpose and vision. So we can have these awe moments, and that's our challenge this week.
Yes. It doesn't have to be a big thing. You don't have to travel to the Grand Canyon to experience some, amazing view. It could be watching your kids do their thing, going to a sporting event and just feeling like, they're doing their thing and they're succeeding, or watching them just feel satisfaction in that. It could be a great meal with a good friend. Like, I have so many awe moments. Like, I love that more than most things. Just good food with good people. So find yourself an awe moment.
This week, focus on the awe. Was that soothing?
Okay. A little creepy,
so
a little soothing.
Join us next week to talk about habits, because this is the most encouraging part of this, because this is the part we can control. We cannot control our circumstances all the time, and we definitely can't control our mother and father coming together in that moment to create us and our genes, but we can control our habits. There is
hope in the habits. That's right. So have a great week. Be happy, because
we love you.